Sophie Bennett stared at the coffee stain spreading across the marble floor of the executive suite, her heart sinking as she realized it had splattered onto the hem of her boss's custom suit pants. Lucas Sterling stood frozen, his phone pressed to his ear, looking down at the damage with an expression Sophie couldn't quite read. "I'll call you back," Lucas said into the phone, his voice oddly calm. He ended the call and looked at Sophie. "Are you hurt?" "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry," Sophie stammered, already grabbing napkins from his desk. "I tripped over the carpet edge. I'll pay for the dry cleaning or replacement or whatever you need." "Sophie, stop." Something in his tone made her look up. He wasn't angry. Instead, he looked tired, almost defeated, unusual for the man tech world had just named most innovative entrepreneur under 35. "It's just a suit," Lucas said, running his hand through his dark hair. "I have 20 others exactly like it." Sophie stood, still clutching the coffee-soaked napkins. In 4 years of working as Lucas's executive assistant at Sterling Innovations, she'd learned to read his moods. Right now, beneath the expensive suit and commanding presence, her boss looked like a man carrying something heavy. "Is everything okay?" she asked, forgetting for a moment the professional boundaries she usually maintained. Lucas walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown San Francisco. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office. "My mother is hosting her annual charity gala next Saturday," he said finally. 500 guests, press coverage, the whole production my family excels at creating. Sophie had heard about Eleanor Sterling's legendary galas. The woman had built a tech investment empire and believed in showcasing her success. "That sounds like quite an event," Sophie offered, unsure where this was going. "It would be, except my mother has decided this is the perfect opportunity to officially announce my engagement to Victoria Cross." Sophie felt her stomach drop, though she couldn't explain why. She knew Victoria Cross by reputation, socialite, philanthropist, heiress to the Cross media fortune. She was stunning, impeccably connected, and had been photographed with Lucas at various events over the past year. "I didn't realize you were engaged," Sophie said carefully. "Congratulations." Lucas turned to face her, and there was something almost desperate in his gray eyes. "I'm not engaged. Victoria and I went on 4 dates, all arranged by our families. I made it clear I wasn't interested in anything serious. But she's convinced our families should merge their empires, and my mother agrees. She's been pressuring me for months. Can't you just tell them no?" "I have. Repeatedly." Lucas moved closer, his hands in his pockets. "But my mother is a woman who sees what she wants to see. And Victoria doesn't accept rejection easily. If I show up alone to this gala, they'll parade her around as my date. Every tech blog in the city will run engagement speculation by morning." Sophie shifted uncomfortably, still not understanding why Lucas was confiding all this to her. "So what are you going to do?" Lucas took a deep breath. "I need you to be my girlfriend for the evening." Sophie blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Fake girlfriend, to be precise. Just for one night. If I show up with someone I'm clearly involved with, it sends a message to both Victoria and my mother that I'm not available. Mr. Sterling, I don't think that's appropriate. I work for you." "Which is exactly why you're perfect for this," Lucas said. "You know me better than anyone else in my life. You can anticipate what I'm going to say before I say it. We already have natural chemistry in a professional sense. It wouldn't take much to make it appear romantic." Sophie's mind raced. This was insane, inappropriate, completely outside their working relationship. And yet a small part of her, the part she usually kept locked away during business hours, was intrigued. "Why me?" she asked. "You could call any number of women who would jump at the chance to be seen as Lucas Sterling's girlfriend, even for a night." "Because I trust you," Lucas said simply. "Because you're honest and brilliant, and you won't get the wrong idea about what this is. And because I'm willing to pay you $15,000 for approximately 6 hours of your time. Sophie's breath caught. $15,000. That was almost 4 months of her salary. And more importantly, it was exactly what she still needed for her brother Ryan's treatment. Ryan had been diagnosed with a rare neurological condition 6 months ago, and even with insurance, the specialized therapy he needed was devastatingly expensive. $15,000 to pretend to be your girlfriend for one evening, Sophie repeated slowly. Plus a shopping budget for whatever you need, clothes, shoes, hair, makeup. Call it $3,000. Whatever makes you feel confident. Sophie bit her lip, her practical side warring with her professional ethics. This is crazy. Completely insane, Lucas agreed. But will you do it? She thought about Ryan, about the mounting medical bills, about the scared look in her little brother's eyes during their last hospital visit. She thought about how Lucas had been a good boss, demanding but fair, and how he was looking at her now with something close to desperation. I have conditions, Sophie said finally. Relief flooded Lucas's face. Name them. First, this is strictly professional. One night, nothing more. Afterward, we never mention it again, and our working relationship remains exactly as it is. Agreed. Second, you brief me completely on your family, friends, and anyone else at this gala. I need to know enough to be convincing. I'll give you a full dossier. Third, we practice. If we're going to make this believable, we need to look comfortable together. That means rehearsing how we interact, what our story is, all of it. Lucas smiled, and Sophie realized it was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in weeks. So you're saying yes? Sophie took a deep breath, knowing she was crossing a line she could never uncross. Yes. I'll be your fake girlfriend. But only for that one night. Thank you, Sophie, Lucas said, and the gratitude in his voice was so sincere that Sophie felt a flutter of something she definitely shouldn't be feeling for her boss. I promise I'll make this as painless as possible. Sophie left his office to clean up the coffee disaster, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. What she didn't know was that by agreeing to one night of pretending, she'd set in motion a chain of events that would change everything she thought she knew about Lucas Sterling, about herself, and about the fine line between performance and reality. The following morning, Sophie arrived at the office to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a black credit card with her name embossed on it and a note in Lucas's distinctive handwriting, for shopping. Don't hold back. You need to look like someone I would actually date. Sophie smiled despite herself, tucking the card into her wallet. She'd agreed to play a part, and she was going to play it perfectly. What she hadn't anticipated was how quickly the lines between acting and authenticity would begin to blur, or how one night of pretending could reveal truths that both she and Lucas had been hiding from themselves for far longer than either wanted to admit. As she booted up her computer and reviewed Lucas's schedule for the day, Sophie felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. In 7 days, she would walk into Eleanor Sterling's gala on Lucas's arm, pretending to be his girlfriend. She had no idea that by the end of that night, the pretending would be over, and the real story would finally begin. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation that felt both surreal and strangely intimate. Lucas provided Sophie with detailed information about every important person attending his mother's charity event, and they spent lunch breaks reviewing names, relationships, and the intricate web of connections that defined Silicon Valley's elite. But it was the evenings that changed everything. On Tuesday, Lucas insisted they practice at his penthouse rather than the office, claiming they needed a more relaxed environment. Sophie entered the sleek space with her notepad and professional demeanor, only to find Lucas waiting with takeout and a nervousness she'd never seen in him. Lesson 1, he said, gesturing to the couch. We need to be comfortable in each other's personal space. They spent 2 hours simply sitting close, talking about things that had nothing to do with Sterling Innovations. Sophie learned that Lucas played guitar but only when he thought no one could hear. That he'd wanted to be a teacher before his mother pushed him into tech. That he donated anonymously to pediatric hospitals because his younger sister had died of cancer when he was 14. By Thursday, they were holding hands without thinking about it, and Lucas could rest his arm around Sophie's shoulders in a way that looked completely natural. On Friday evening, they practiced dancing in his living room, moving together to soft jazz while rain drummed against the windows. When the song ended, they stood sway. Slightly, Lucas's hand warm on Sophie's back, both pretending not to notice how perfectly they fit together. "You're a good dancer," Sophie whispered, suddenly aware of how close his face was to hers. "You're easy to lead," Lucas replied, his voice rough. For a moment, Sophie thought he might kiss her. Really kiss her. But then he stepped back and suggested they call it a night. Now, the night before the gala, Lucas asked her to come to his penthouse one more time. "There's something I need to tell you," he said when she arrived. "Something that might change everything." Sophie's heart raced. "What is it?" "I have a daughter. Iris. She's 7 years old." He pulled out his phone, showing Sophie a photo. A small girl with Lucas's gray eyes smiled at the camera, but her skin had a subtle purple tone that shimmered. "Her mother wasn't human," Lucas said quietly. "She was an alien scientist studying Earth's technology development. We fell in love. She died when Iris was born from biological incompatibility." His voice cracked. "I've kept Iris hidden because if anyone discovered her, she'd be taken from me. Studied. Treated like a specimen instead of a child." Sophie stared at the photo, mind reeling. Then she looked at Lucas, at the fear and desperate hope in his eyes. "Where is she?" she asked. "Here. In the secure wing of the penthouse. She's never been to school, never played with other children. I want to meet her," Sophie said without hesitation. Lucas led her through hidden corridors to a beautiful room filled with advanced technology and learning materials. A small girl sat reading, her purple skin glowing softly in the lamplight. "Iris, this is Sophie. She's someone very important to me." The girl studied Sophie with eyes that were deep purple, otherworldly and brilliant. "Your pupils dilated when you saw me." "Surprise, not fear. That's unusual in humans." "Hi, Iris," Sophie said, kneeling. "Your dad says you love learning. What are you reading?" "Quantum computing theory. Father thinks I should read more fiction, but most stories lack narrative consistency." Over the next hours, Sophie played logic games with Iris, worked through puzzles, treated her like the brilliant child she was. The girl bloomed under attention, laughing in ways Lucas said she never had. After Iris was asleep, Lucas pulled Sophie close on the terrace. "Thank you," he said. "She's never bonded with anyone like that." "She's wonderful," Sophie whispered. "Lucas, I'm falling for both of you." "God, Sophie." Lucas cupped her face. "I've been falling for you since that day you spilled coffee on me. Maybe longer. This stopped being fake the moment I asked you." Their kiss was deep and claiming, weeks of tension finally released. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow night," he said. "Let's show them exactly what real looks like." The Sterling estate was a palace of glass and light, filled with Silicon Valley's elite in designer gowns and tuxedos. Sophie wore midnight blue silk that made her feel like someone who belonged in Lucas's world. Lucas never left her side, his hand at her back, his attention focused on her in a way that felt increasingly real. Eleanor Sterling was elegant and sharp-eyed. "So you're the woman who's finally captured my son's attention. How did you meet?" "At work," Sophie said honestly. "We became friends first. The rest developed naturally." "How refreshingly straightforward," Eleanor said, though her eyes assessed everything. Victoria Cross appeared during dinner, stunning in red, her smile predatory. "Lucas, darling. I've been hoping we could talk." "I'm exactly where I want to be," Lucas said, pulling Sophie closer. The evening continued beautifully, Sophie charming Lucas's family, dancing in his arms, losing herself in the illusion. then during a bathroom break, Victoria cornered her. Sophie Bennett, age 29, executive assistant earning $52,000 a year, Victoria said coldly. Medical bills for your brother totaling $90,000. You're being paid to pretend, aren't you? How much? The full $15,000? Sophie felt the blood drain from her face. I did my research, Victoria smiled viciously. And I'm about to share it with everyone. You're a fraud, and Lucas is a fool. Before Sophie could respond, Victoria strode back into the ballroom. Within minutes, she was whispering to Eleanor, who looked shocked, then furious. Sophie watched the whispers spread like wildfire. She saw Lucas's mother approach him, saw his face harden as he listened, saw him search the crowd for her. Their eyes met across the room, and Sophie saw the exact moment he understood what had happened. She turned and fled toward the exit, tears streaming down her face. She'd been humiliated in front of everyone, exposed as exactly what Victoria had called her, a paid pretender. Sophie, wait. Lucas caught her arm in the foyer. Let me go, Lucas. Victoria told everyone the truth. That I'm just your assistant. That you're paying me. I've embarrassed you in front of everyone. The only person who should be embarrassed is Victoria for being cruel, and me for not doing this sooner. Before Sophie could ask what he meant, Lucas strode back into the ballroom. He climbed onto the small stage where the band had been playing. Excuse me, everyone, Lucas's voice boomed. I need to say something. The room fell silent. Eleanor looked alarmed. Victoria looked triumphant. It's true that I asked Sophie to pretend to be my girlfriend tonight, Lucas continued. I offered her money because I was desperate to avoid an arrangement I never wanted. But what Victoria doesn't know, what I didn't know until this week, is that the pretending became real. Sophie stood frozen in the doorway, unable to breathe. Sophie Bennett is the smartest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever known. Yes, she works as my assistant. And I don't care who knows it. For 4 years, she's been the first person I want to talk to every morning. She makes me laugh. She challenges me. She sees through all the corporate nonsense to who I really am. Lucas found Sophie's eyes across the crowd. This week, practicing being a couple, I fell completely in love with her. She met my daughter. Yes, I have a daughter I've been protecting, and Sophie loved her without hesitation. So thank you, Victoria, for forcing my hand. And Mother, I love you, but if you can't accept Sophie, you can't accept me. He walked through the silent crowd toward Sophie. When he reached her, he cupped her face, wiping away her tears. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, he whispered. This stopped being fake for me days ago. Lucas, Sophie breathed. This is crazy. I know. But it's also true. So please, will you stop being my fake girlfriend and be my real one? Sophie laughed through her tears and kissed him. The ballroom erupted in applause, though whether approval or shock, Sophie no longer cared. The next week was chaos. Lucas's public confession made headlines. Tech billionaire falls for his assistant, real-life Cinderella story or professional scandal? Eleanor initially refused to speak to Lucas. The board at Sterling Innovations called emergency meetings about optics and propriety. Sophie faced whispers and judgment from co-workers who'd seen the viral videos. But worse was Victoria's revenge. I know about Iris, Victoria texted Lucas. About what she really is. Unless Sophie leaves you, I'm going public with everything. Photos, evidence, all of it. Lucas showed Sophie the message, his face pale. This is my fault. I never should have put you in this position. Don't, Sophie said firmly. Victoria is the one choosing cruelty. Not you. But the threats escalated. Victoria hired investigators who somehow got photos of Iris, her purple skin clearly visible. She leaked hints to conspiracy websites, building buzz. You need to distance yourself from this, Lucas told Sophie one night. From me. I can't let you be destroyed because of my family. I'm not leaving you, Sophie said. I love you. I love Iris. And I'm done letting people like Victoria dictate my life. The next day, Victoria called a press conference, claiming she had evidence of extraterrestrial life being hidden by Silicon Valley elite. Sophie and Lucas watched the broadcast together, holding hands. What do we do? Sophie whispered. Lucas took a deep breath. We tell the truth. All of it. Together. They called their own press conference. Lucas told the story of Iris's mother, of their love, of his daughter's unique heritage. Sophie stood beside him, publicly declaring her love for both of them. My daughter deserves to live without fear, Lucas said. And the woman I love deserves to be treated with respect, not used as a pawn in someone else's vendetta. The response was mixed, some supportive, some calling for government intervention. But what mattered was that they'd faced it together. Victoria's blackmail backfired. Lucas's lawyers discovered her investigators had broken multiple laws obtaining their evidence. She faced criminal charges, and her own family distanced themselves from her actions. The scientific community rallied around Lucas, arguing that Iris deserved the same rights as any child. Legal experts supported their case. But the media attention made staying in San Francisco impossible. I have a private research facility in Montana, Lucas told Sophie. Secure, isolated. Iris could live freely there. But Sophie, I won't ask you to give up your life. Yes, Sophie interrupted. Absolutely yes. Eleanor eventually came around, apologizing tearfully. I was worried about scandal. But watching you fight for my granddaughter, you're exactly who Lucas needs. 6 months later, Sophie stood on the deck of their Montana estate, watching Iris play in the meadow. The girl's purple skin glowed in sunlight as she chased butterflies, finally free. Lucas wrapped his arms around Sophie from behind. Happy? Deliriously. Sophie had started her own consulting firm, working remotely while homeschooling Iris. Lucas had stepped back from sterling innovations to focus on family, consulting part-time. I have something for you, Lucas said, turning her to face him. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring. Sophie Bennett, you agreed to one night of pretending to be my girlfriend. Instead, you became my partner, Iris's mother, and the love of my life. Will you marry me? Yes, Sophie said through tears. Always yes. They married 3 months later at the estate, with just family and close friends. Iris was flower girl, calculating that there was a 96% probability they'd be happy together. At the reception, Eleanor raised her glass. I thought my son needed someone from our world. Turns out he needed someone who could show him what really matters. Welcome to the family, Sophie. Sophie looked at Lucas and Iris, thinking about that day she'd spilled coffee and changed everything. She'd agreed to pretend for one night. She'd gotten a lifetime of real love instead. What are you thinking? Lucas murmured, pulling her close. That I'd spill coffee on you every day if it meant ending up here. Lucas laughed. You know what the best part is? What? We never actually needed to pretend. I was falling for you long before that gala. The fake girlfriend thing just gave me an excuse to finally act on it. So you're saying you manipulated me? Sophie teased. I'm saying I was terrified to risk our working relationship for something that felt too good to be true. The gala gave me cover. He kissed her softly. Best $15,000 I ever spent. You know I'm donating that money to charity, right? I know. It's one of the 1,000 reasons I love you. As stars appeared over the Montana sky and Iris's laughter echoed across the meadow, Sophie reflected on the journey. She'd walked into Lucas's office that day expecting just another workday. She'd walked out having agreed to the craziest proposal of her life. One night of pretending had turned into forever of reality. The fake girlfriend had become the real wife. And the man who'd offered her money to pretend had given her something far more valuable, a family, a purpose, and a love that needed no performance at all. Sometimes the best things start as make-believe. Sometimes what we think is fake reveals what's been real all along. And sometimes, one night of pretending is exactly what we need to finally stop pretending and start living. Sophie had pretended to date her millionaire boss for one night. What followed changed everything, but not because of the pretending. Because underneath the act was a truth they'd both been too scared to acknowledge. They'd been falling in love all along, waiting for an excuse to finally admit it. The coffee spill, the gala, the fake relationship, they were just the catalyst. The love was always real. And now, finally, they could stop pretending and simply be.